Hello guys and gals, and welcome. So today, I have a very interesting rune word for you. It is the rune word, Breath of the Dying. And I have the unique ability to actually show you it on my character, not just a single player character. This is one that I made. This is my first Breath of the Dying, and I figured why not make this my next rune word video, since I was actually able to create one. And what we need to do is we need to go over to the website and we need to take a look at the variables for this particular weapon. And you'll see that my weapon did not roll the best variables. So without further ado, let me bring that up real quick. This is right here. There we go. So as you can see, we've got Breath of the Dying, and it's VexHelElEldZodEth. Now, most of the runes in this rune word are not very expensive. You're not going to have any trouble finding a Hell rune, an L rune, an Eld rune, or an Eth. The runes that you're going to have trouble with are the Vex and the Zod Rune. Now, Zod runes can be traded for. You're probably not going to find one, but you can trade for one. Usually someone has found one and they don't particularly need it. Now, the very interesting thing about the Breath of the Dying rune word recipe is that it contains the Zod rune. And this is very, very important because the Zod rune makes the item indestructible. So that means that you can make the rune word into ethereal items. And as you can see here, it goes in all weapons. So any 6-socket weapon has to be 6 sockets. Now, in particular, people tend to use the Berserker's axe. That is one of the best weapons, bar none. And it is because of several factors. Number one, it has some of the best damage per second for a one-handed weapon. And on top of that, it also has the highest range of a one-handed weapon. So Berserker's axes actually have I believe it's a +3 range, whereas most one-handed weapons only have a 0 to 2 range, which is very interesting, and this makes the Berserker's axe a very, very good choice. Now, there are certainly other choices that you can put a Breath of the Dying in, and there are many actually. So you can take a very nice polearm, a 6-socket polearm, and you can put Breath of the Dying in it, and this will give you a very, very nice polearm weapon for, say, for instance, a barbarian, like a Breath of the Dying warpike, or maybe you want to make Breath of the Dying for a shape-shifting druid, a werewolf druid. It's actually a very good weapon for a werewolf druid. Now, keep in mind that Breath of the Dying, because of that Zod, can be used on anybody. And there are better choices for weapons other than Breath of the Dying, don't get me wrong. And I'm not going to tell you that it's better than Grief or it's better than some other choices. However, there are certain characters that Breath of the Dying is the best choice for. For instance, a Vengeance Paladin does not get the effects from Grief. So the plus damage on Grief, unfortunately, does not affect Vengeance at all. So as a Vengeance Paladin, I don't want Grief, I want Breath of the Dying or something like maybe a Death rune word. And the reason for that is the massive physical damage that increases the damage of my Vengeance. Also, if you were a polearm barbarian, you wouldn't want Grief, you'd probably want Breath of the Dying as well. And it's just the ethereal nature of the weapon combined with the indestructibility makes for a very sweet item indeed. Now, let's take a look at the variables here. So first off the list, we have 50% chance to cast level 20 Poison Nova when you kill an enemy. So we need to go over and take a look at Poison Nova. And of course, it's going to be unsynergized, unless you're actually a Necromancer. And level 20 Poison Nova is 427 to 468 poison damage. I'm not sure if you can see that there. It might be a little off the screen. But that's basically how much extra poison damage is being added to your attack. Basically about 450 extra poison damage. So not terrible. That's it's just free damage every single time you kill an enemy. You will get that 450 poison damage, and it's AoE as well. So every single monster within range is going to get hit by that poison damage. Poison damage, while it may not be the absolute best for actually damaging monsters because of the resistances and poison length reductions and things like that come into play, the poison actually does prevent regeneration, and that is very useful to certain characters, especially my Vengeance Paladin, who can only attack one monster at a time. So having a constantly spamming AoE attack, which is softening up the targets for me, is definitely nice. Now, the next effect is the Indestructibility, which comes from the Zod Rune, and that is what makes it important to make this weapon in an ethereal base. Now, if you were to make a Breath of the Dying in a non-ethereal base, you certainly could, but it would just be a waste. It would be an absolute waste, because you really want to utilize that Indestructibility. It also comes in handy for other things, like if you're a Zeal Paladin or if you're a Vengeance Paladin like me, and you tend to break your weapon a lot. It's just really nice to have a weapon that doesn't break. Of course, most people will make their Grief in a Phase Blade, which also does not break. So you know, a very, very similar thing going on there. It also has 60% IAS, which is absolutely amazing. Most characters, pretty much all characters, want increased attack speed when they are a melee or ranged character, and 60% IAS on the weapon is just incredible. It also has a variable enhanced damage, and this enhanced damage is huge. At 350 to 400% is a massive amount of damage. Combined with the already 50% ethereal base, you're looking at a massively damaging weapon. And it goes beyond anything probably you've ever seen. So, you know, you might be playing a Paladin for a really long time, and the highest damage weapon you might have seen is like 276 damage or something like that. And that might be like a hell scepter, but this Breath of the Dying is a one-handed weapon with 478 top end on mine, and I mean that's not even counting, you know, the fact that I rolled bottom. Mine rolled 351%, literally 1% from the worst enhanced damage that it could possibly roll. Absolutely terrible. Next on the list there is 200% damage to undead, which, while it may not seem like a lot, when you're fighting undead monsters, which happens a lot, that bonus to damage is actually really nice. Unfortunately, that does not affect my vengeance damage, but it will affect my physical damage to the undead, so whatever my physical damage portion is of the grief, and my physical damage portion of the grief is actually pretty high, because the damage of the weapon is really high. If I actually, I know you can't see this, but if I go to my character panel and I just switch to a regular attack, I do about 556 to 1,758 with the weapon in just regular attack mode, which means that 200% damage to undead is going to make me something along the lines of 1,000 to like 3,000 damage versus undead, and in the physical component, which is pretty sweet. And then next on the list here, we have negative 25% target defense, which is always nice to have. Makes it easier to hit the target just in general, because, you know, they have less defense to work with. Now, I already have a huge negative defense on my Conviction, and I don't even know if they stack together. But you know, that's an interesting question, and maybe I'll go see if I can answer that real quick. As far as I can tell, looks like it does. However, many people are talking about, apparently there might be a 95% cap on it. So, I don't know. Conviction does actually go to negative 94%. So maybe that negative 25% is filling out that last 1%. Not like it really matters. It also does half effect versus bosses. So keep that in mind. We also have plus 50 to attack rating, which is always nice to have on a weapon. Doesn't really matter. Plus 50 attack rating against undead, which again is also nice to have. Those are things coming from like the L and the Eld runes and stuff like that. 7% mana steal per hit, which is absolutely excellent for certain classes. Some classes need buku amounts of mana steal, and some classes don't. My Vengeance Paladin, he does, because Vengeance has a mana cost of 10.5 per attack, and that can add up really quickly. And I run out of mana really fast, especially with like mana burn and various other things like me casting Holy Shield, which costs 35 mana, and so forth and so on. I'll run out of mana really quickly if I don't have Mana Steal. The lifesteal varies from 12 to 15%, which is not a huge variable there, so I don't think a lot of people are too upset if they don't get the 15%. But it's definitely nice to have the higher percentage. I think mine rolled 13%, so 1% from bottom. Literally, I rolled 1% from bottom on the ED and 1% from bottom on the lifesteal. It's sad. We also have Prevent Monster Heal, which is absolutely amazing. So if I tag a monster with this, Prevent Monster Heal will prevent the monster from healing for essentially, I think it's 20 minutes, I want to say. Last time I looked this up, which was a long time ago, I believe it was about 20 minutes. And it's been some time since I looked it up. But there are some downsides to Prevent Monster Heal, and Prevent Monster Heal does not work on Ubers. So if you're fighting Uber Diablo, Uber Bale, Uber Mephisto, Uber Diablo, Uber Duriel, Uber Uber Iswal, Lilith, or Pandemonium Diablo, it does not work on them. It's also important to note that Prevent Monster Heal does not work on mercenaries. So if you take a item that has Prevent Monster Heal on it and you put it on a mercenary, it will have 0 effect. So keep that in mind. Next on the list, we have plus 30 to all attributes. And who doesn't like plus 30 to all attributes? That's plus 30 to energy, that's plus 30 to vitality, plus 30 to dex, and plus 30 to strength. That is absolutely amazing. And you're going to be getting block chance from the dexterity, you're going to be getting defense from the dexterity, you're going to be getting damage from the strength, you're going to be getting health from the vitality, and you're going to be getting mana from the energy, and having the mana, like we talked about earlier on a Vengeance Paladin, is actually very, very nice. And this will open up possibilities for future armors as well, because as a higher strength character who's running plus 30 to all stats and things like that, you can build better armors. So the requirement on a Berserker's Axe is 101 for the ethereal version, and that means that if you have just the base strength to use the Berserker's Axe, which is 101 plus the 30 on the weapon, you're looking at 131 strength, which is more than enough to use an Archon plate, more than enough to use quite a few pieces of armor. So very, very nice. And then you could probably get stats from other places, like Mara's Kaleidoscope has plus 5 to all attributes, and things like that. So keep that in mind. Next on the list is plus 1 to light radius, which is it's okay. It's always nice to have some light radius, I guess. And requirements negative 20%. So the Hell Rune is what's doing the negative requirements, and that is what's bringing down the dex and the strength requirement on the weapon. So not only do we have a lower requirement on the weapon, we also have a much higher attributes because we're wearing the weapon. So we can bring down our strength and our dexterity to a lower level and still maintain our armor and our block chance, because the weapon has a really low requirement, and it also gives us stat points to boot. So that's very, very nice. And then we can take those extra stat points and we can shove them into vitality, so we have more hit points. All right, so let's go back over to the Paladin real quick, and we're going to take a look at how the weapon functions and how mine particularly rolled. So as I said, mine actually rolled 351% ED, which is very sad. I'm not too sad about it, though, because it's my first Breath of the Dying on Diablo 2 Resurrected, and it's freaking owning. It is, literally I'm kicking butts and taking names. It has the 13% lifesteal, which is the 1% from the bottom as well, which is... couldn't have gone worse for my roll. That's all I got to say about that. However, it just works so well. Look at all these poison novas popping out. Every single time I kill a monster, I can literally walk up to most monsters and I can one-shot them. It's not even that big of a deal. And I got my little Act 3 mercenary for the lulls. And you see, the poison nova really does spam. I am overburdened. So what are the possible use case scenarios for Breath of the Dying? There's a lot of possible use case scenarios for Breath of the Dying. One in particular is the one that I'm using right now, which is the Vengeance Paladin. Vengeance is a skill that works very, very oddly, and it increases your damage by adding fire, cold, and lightning damage to your attacks. And the very interesting thing about this is that it goes off of the weapon damage almost entirely, and things like grief do not affect it at all. So if you want to beef up the vengeance damage, you have to go with something like Breath of the Dying, which is why I did. And Breath of the Dying just has so many nice effects on it that it can be like one of the best weapons in the game. Because it has 60% IAS on it, it also makes an absolutely great weapon for a werewolf druid. Because the 60% IAS is there, along with the really high damage, the life and mana steal, the 30 to all attributes, it makes an absolutely excellent, I believe it's, is it Fury? Fury werewolf. Why am I forgetting what the skill is called? I'm absolutely stupid. So, yes, Fury. Okay, I got it right. All right. And because it has the 60% IAS on it, and that is something that that shape-shifting druids absolutely have to have. Without that IAS on the weapon, they are completely lost. A lot of I've actually seen a lot of shape-shifting druids put this in like a war pike or something along that line, so that they get the massive amount of damage along with the IAS, and they run around absolutely just murking everything. And it's absolutely beautiful. Of course, you can also use Breath of the Dying on a barbarian. There are certainly better choices than Breath of the Dying. You know, there is the grief weapon, which unfortunately has the plus damage, which kind of trumps just about every weapon out there. However, there are specific reasons why you would go with Breath of the Dying over other things, and you have to research your particular character and find out why Breath of the Dying would be better for you, as opposed to a grief or a death or any of the other really nice weapons. And do yourself a favor and just make sure that if you do finally get a Zod Rune and you do finally get a Vex Rune, get yourself a good base, okay? Find yourself a really nice base for it. Don't just use any base that you've got laying around. Make sure that it's ethereal, because there is absolutely no reason to make a Breath of the Dying in a non-ethereal weapon. It has a Zod Rune in it. It is going to make the recipe indestructible, and it's just amazing to have that ridiculous damage. All in all, I think that the Breath of the Dying is an amazing weapon, and even if you just wanted to make it for fun, instead of a grief, it's really not going to be like a giganormous difference in damage. As you can see, I can literally run around one-shotting everything just about. I mean, let's go somewhere else. Let's go to Crystalline Passage, and this is hell difficulty, mind you, and I literally am just one-shotting everything with my Vengeance Paladin. And I'm not saying that grief doesn't do better damage, but what I'm saying is that it's that Breath of the Dying does a lot of damage. Okay, if I'm around here like one-shotting monsters and like 2-3 shotting elites, you know, I don't know what to tell you. Other than it's just a great weapon. Now it really depends on if you have the runes available. Zod runes are rather hard to find, and we need to talk about that. So the Zod Rune is the most difficult rune to find in the game. It is not the rarest, and what I mean by not the rarest is, I mean, it is not used as much. So Zod runes really only have 2 uses for the most part, and that is, number 1, making items indestructible, which is a fairly nice use, and number 2, Breath of the Dying. So when you compare it to something like a Jaw or a Burr Rune, which is much more useful because it has so many other recipes that it's in. I mean, you've got a Jaw Rune in Enigma, you've got Jaw Rune in Dream, you've got Jaw Rune in quite a few other recipes that are very popular, and of course, so the Jaw Rune ends up being more valuable. But when you're actually trying to find one, like running cows, you are much less likely to find a Zod Rune than you are a Jaw Rune, just simply because of the rarity of it. A lot of people, if they do absolutely want a Zod Rune and they can't find one or trade for one, they will actually look for 2 Cham Runes, and they will transmute them up to a Zod, which is a one way to get your hands on a Zod Rune. In fact, some people believe that the Cham Rune is absolutely useless, and the only good that it has is to transmute up to a Zod. So, you know, there's that. Anyway, guys and gals, I hope you enjoyed this episode of Rune Words. And there will be more to come, I promise. So stay tuned. And as always, thanks for watching, and keep watching.